book is about. It was a tricky book to write. I couldn't begin to write for quite a while until I asked the right question. Many times people who suffer through losses and separations and divorces, we tend to say, why is this happening to me? And worse things. But that was the dead end question for me, and it didn't take me anywhere. And then when the separation was going to happen, and there was no choice, and I didn't have that mind telling me, you got to keep your family together, that's the right thing to do. I moved beyond the mind, and I wanted to know what my body, I knew what was the right thing to do, but I didn't know what the right thing for me was. And that's when I began to ask my heart, and I went visceral, and I wanted to understand what we are going through. So this book for me is a kind of grief. It goes through some cycles of grief. The publication of the manuscript took a little time. Sometimes publishers would say, yeah, but it repeats. And I'm like, yeah, that's the whole idea. And so the tricky part with it was, how do I create a narrative while at the same time sustain that sense of grief coming back in different ways? And it's not a straight linear line. So that's a little preamble. And the whole structure of the book is around self-portraits. That's what allowed me to write, is because it's so hard to write it when somebody else is in the picture that is very identifiable. I've only been married once, so it's not very hard to know who the other person is. And so the book is structured around self-portraits, and at the end of the book, I get hung up on the wall alongside all my questions, like art. Tossing and turning. The rain reprints itself from yesterday, repaints a city where objects have trapped the river. A poem wraps around a stone, clinging. It says a woman is walking and is cut off. Her story comes apart where the poem rips. And what of the man? Stopped in his tracks, snagged on a phrase in the grip of the stone, his dark gaze. She steps cautiously between words, split, lingers in their mute promises, their slippery moss, curls up in the day's possibilities, sleeps in the fear of conclusions. In a crooked, bent city, the small sanctuary of such love. What will they toss in it? What will they get back? Husband, you answer my questions the way the sea answers. I ask, nothing happens. Then a seashell washes out, a crab, a sand dollar, a piece of twisted driftwood. What does this green pebble mean that turns black when dried? Sometimes it is seaweed around my ankles. Late afternoon woman. I take it, an endless shore of broken questions. Among the driftwood, my tired limbs entice twilight. Stroke it as if it were a bird alighting on my hand. I know I live by the blood of sunsets. This gift becomes a search through pebbled dreams and asphalt glances. I crouch to stitch the belly of a shark the sea rejected. At the back of my head, jaws open wide to swallow me. Tossing and turning too. Each time the rains come, trees crowd the room, leaves open into your hands, reaching. And each time it's like pregnant with the shift-shaping clouds, crows at dusk conspire into urgent questions, clot into cavernous nights. I follow prescribed lines, fold, iron, crease, paper cranes gather us into their fragile wings, and nothing here is the usual. Tender thoughts without bearings, tremulous. On some days so tender they halt the fingers, snag the breath, and each time it feels like sincerely yours. What went wrong? Went wrong. I never had a chance to rehearse this with you. Slowly, objects in the house emptied of dreams. We moved them around in our absences. Even the furniture plays visual tricks on us. I fall asleep in one place, wake up in another. The silence between us splits at the seams into loneliness. The body wears it with a lack of understanding. Even our ghosts are listless, stare hopelessly, take bets on us. I stand on these stairs, exhausted, liturgical, unsure. Was it up or was it down we were going? Was it your light that lit up the things in the world? When we knew the right things to say, how we went a long way, mean them. Now, every day I slip down the steel hill of your gate, whittle myself down to a nerve ending, sit on the edge of each evening as the river of dusk ushers the crows overhead. Reassure me some things still make sense. The way the underside of a wing captures the late sun rays. The way I want to scoop the good years inside me, stash them in poems. Simple things. The many winds in your hair. The way we kissed while waiting for the light to change. If I can put these fragments together, I can convince myself we existed. I have been swallowing my years with you the way a magician swallows swords. Look, I say to no one in particular, look, I will do this trick. And the sword will disappear. And I won't be hurt if I do it right. If you buy into the illusion, if we agree not to tell, if it does not work out, if these memories are too sharp, if this is not the thing for me, if I am not a magician after all. Perhaps it was only a dream when your home left you in a hurry, before the morning light, left the door open, the curtains ablaze with sunrise, the space between us cluttered with little. They have grown now. You should see them. They chase dust bunnies around, are asking for water and solid food. And the doctor could not find anything wrong with you. After x-rays and ultrasounds, she sent you home. The alley bristles behind you. Shifting shadows are quick to trace your fear. Scratch out a heavy tune with a needle. Leave tracks in your mind. Any minute now, they will pounce on you, the dumpsters, and you sprint into the street like spilled blood. The city's veins can barely contain your fast beating heart. A lamppost on the street stands sentinel. A soldier with his helmet on stands before the window of your abandonment. You listened to his stories, said he gave up his weapons for a good cause. You couldn't understand the words giving up or what good meant, or if there was something we should have declared to each other, or how your voice turned transgression, how you were held hostage in the ambiguity of his gaze. Those little acts of warfare that first begin within ourselves. The doctor could not find anything wrong with you, sent you home, and you went looking for it. That night, you slept on the stacked tables of your worries behind the folded chairs of your marriage, piled high as grief. This party is over. All night the wind ran its fingers through your sorrow, whispered fables in your hair, your eyes accustomed to a darkness that descended for years. Did not know how much more you have yet to lose. Did not know he was watching, tallying your wrong moves, your missteps, the words you never meant, stacking them high like folded chairs and tables. One way and for lease, we paint our facades in recognizable, acceptable colors. Bordered and shuttered inside ourselves, I never knew not loving you was an option. We're busy fighting the small crimes. The big ones are beyond us now. The windows with the views are elsewhere. The mountains you imagined curious and peeking have looked away. Stay at a safe distance. The sunbeams that so readily stretched like rugs on our afternoon floors have been issued restraining orders. The doors of your shock open wide. Life itself resembles a chopping board on which the Atlantic char is sliced, filleted, and quartered. The good bits taken out. Red-orange flesh, guts spill like this is some abstract art. The things you find in the bellies of fish. A hook, a spoon, a cigarette butt, an assortment of plastics, a golden ring. The scattered fish heads stare, their eyes fixed on your confusion, your broken heart. The hooks of your unanswered questions still not taken out. Hooks you've been biting for too many years. There was that other dream of the mountains. At their feet, the straight-back houses, spilled children in the rumbling stream. With their fishing rods, their rubber boots, their buckets full of small and wild words, they drew a world you could live in. Blurred the edges of your fears, cut them with scissors as if felt, made shadow puppets out of them. Muddied the afternoon floors of your reason. Dragged in freedom so palpable you could taste it on their fired up cheeks. Like weeds, they do not understand the power of concrete. Their bodies feathered with wonder and awe, they grew right through your narrow and sideways days. There's a few sections in the book, so this is the part where I'm going towards the last few sections. I'll read this poem. I haven't read it yet. Afloat on the emotions of bodies. Whose mind moves here? Among these images bobbing, these morphologies afloat, attuned to rain, orphaned, against another's graph of being, 1,000 words and still nothing said of this together, this giving birth to a swirl of ocean, seeking its own center, a dizzying vastness groping for its gravity, an is, an as in which we tiptoe the circumference of our own poverty. The picture is not worth the possession of this boat. Its wreckage moving from room to room, the words we cannot settle in. The rooms that occupy us are all at once sensible, with a sudden slant of afternoon light casting us in its disappearing act of magic. What stirs here? What dares throw disturbing shadows? I could go through all the rooms, account for all the inventory, but I hate closing doors. Towards the end of the book, I begin to not trust language itself. I begin to ask the words to be quiet. I begin to, even question what I've written so far and my self-portraits, because once you fix something in a narrative, there's a grip on it and a hold on it. And it's tricky when we do such things. This poem comes from an image in Bulgaria and memories from that time. It's called What Remains. And as a child, I remember going on field trips to the mausoleum for Georgi Dimitrov, who was a national hero. And it took a number of times for that mausoleum to come down when the changes happened. If I could see you all, I would ask you, how many times do you think it took? But it was definitely 4 or 5 times. And the first time it just only budged and turned on its side a little bit. And there's a little mound right now of that mausoleum. But my memory of going in there from school, waiting on the sidewalks, is what begins this piece. As a child, we went on class trips to the mausoleum, lined up for hours, waited to get in, paid our respect to a national hero, now a husk on display. At that tender age, of course I had reverence for heroes, but once inside I was more curious what the dead looked like. When my grandmother lay there in the chapel, everyone went to kiss her goodbye. When my turn came, I was not sure how to kiss what has died. I don't remember what I did, only she felt like candle, her fingers pale wax, her face honeycomb molded in her likeness. I think of her fingers when I light candles. What remains of the hero is his serenity, and how very cold it was inside, how the blanket was sunken, how he was not all there. And now I think of us, what froze in time, how we barely noticed. Still, the warm light on the face I used to know stirs up the blood in reverence for what is past. And the silence here, no one dares to break. Just the shuffle of feet, in and out, back and forth. And I'll end with this poem. It's called In the Surf. All this you want to say to the relentless surf. How we break on these shores into song, break down into tears. How once our bodies were so awake we were sure we were alive. How the wave is at the mercy of the wind for its breaking. How sunset breaks my fall into the dark. How my body awoke next to yours one morning. How love let me break on you. How we are pebbles rolled smooth against each other in the stark lament of the body's oceans. How water turns memory, crashes and foams on the shores of our etymologies. And how every so often I find a rock, the ocean rolled into a heart. How easy it is to place all my longing and awe on its small, narrow shoulders. How it too was broken before it was rolled smooth, and how on its tiny, petrified body I lay my wonder.